This is Andi Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by Maxi Hughes over Zoom. Maxi, you're only a matter of weeks away now. How are you feeling?
I'm buzzing, mate. Yeah, we've had some top sparring. I did 12 rounds again last night, and everything's on point. We're in front, so um, really happy with where we are, and ready to travel out there on Monday.
Maxi, you've obviously, you've been after a big fight for a long time now. During this camp, you've had that build up, you've had that extra motivation, I imagine. But have you felt it in the gym? Have you felt a difference knowing that you've got this big fight finally, in the grasp of your hand?
Absolutely, yeah. Since February, I believe they were, that their side wanted the fight. Talking to Lou DiBella, doing all negotiating. Um, so it's been there, and the motivation's been there, and it's fueled me. Every training session, sparring, running. I've got like George's face imprinted inside my brain. I see him all the time and thinking about him all the time. Um, yeah, so it's doing me head in a bit. So I can't wait to take care of business. Um, you know, get a good job done on him, and then I can put that to bed, and then I can erase his face out of my brain.
Max, you've obviously been on a terrific run over the last few years, but at what point do you feel like it becomes that you become rather the favourite heading into a fight, or do you prefer being looked at as the underdog?
I don't know if I'll ever become that person. I don't know. I don't know what it is about people's perception of me. I feel like I'm pitted because I've had them early career losses, and I'm always the underdog. People are almost like, oh, it's really good to see him doing really well and that, rather than going, bloody hell, he was good then, wasn't he? I'm looking forward to his fight because he does this, he does that. It's all like, in this fight with George, everybody's perception is, oh, I'm happy he's got the opportunity, rather than he's going over there and he's doing that. You know what I mean? So, that's what I see people think of me, and I don't think that'll change. But that don't bother me. My close family, friends, and my team in gym, we know what we're about, and we know what we do. So them odds, as being the underdog, great. That just looks better on paper for me when I've won. Um, and yeah, it's just I'm never going to change people's perception. Maybe when I'm retired and done, maybe then they'll be like, he was good in money. He was really good. He always fought people who were higher than him, in rankings, stuff like that. But he always won. So maybe that's when they'll really appreciate, what I've done and what I'm about.
Does that frustrate you at all, Max? Here,
Every now and again it does. I just think, why do they think like that? You know, but it's just people in it. But maybe because it's not, I'm a big mouth. I'm not really flashy on social media. Um, not sort, a bragger out like that. Maybe if I create that sort of persona, then people might be like that. But I always said from turning pro, I'll never betray who I am as a person. I'll always be myself. If that means I don't have hundreds of thousands of Instagram followers, I don't care. I when I go to bed at night, I know I've always been true to me and myself, and what you see is what you get with me.
Maxi, let's talk about the fight. How do you go about overcoming the task of George Kambosos?
That's however means necessary. We prepare for all styles. We get a good in training. We don't just we don't like obviously we'll Sean and myself have watched um Cambo and looked at his strengths, looked at his weaknesses and stuff, but you don't know if he's gonna come in with something totally different, to what he does. So we get, in sparring, we get a good mix of all different kinds of sparring, not specifically people who are like George or try and emulate George. We just, we get a good round mix of all styles. Bigger people, shorter people. We just get a mix of it all so that we're just fully prepared in all areas. And I think that's the best you can do.
We obviously saw, George against Devin. George, he likes to be more aggressive, but struggled to get past Devin's jab. He's also a terrific counter puncher. Look at yourself; you've got a very good jab, also a very good counter puncher at that, Maxi. Do you look at that fight between Devin and George and see somewhat similarities in terms of how you can approach the fight and have success against him?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. We see what George doesn't seem to like, and what he struggles with. But again, just come fight night. As Sean says, we'll keep it simple. We'll take it round by round. I'll give you simple instruction going out for each round. If you need to adjust, if you need to change out, I'll tell you, and you'll just go and do it. I mean, Sean's words are he loves, going on fight nights with me because he says it's like having a remote control boxer. Because he tells me stuff and I just go out and do it straight away, just as he says.
What's going to be the key for you on fight night, Maxi?
Just everything that I do well. I believe that everything that I do well is better than what George can bring. And it's not only that; it's what's inside, my desire, my hunger, my motivation. I believe that that's what's going to get this fight won for me.
Maxi, I saw and spoke to George during Haney Lomachenko fight week. Obviously, spoke to him about the fight, and just a couple of comments of his I want to throw at you, just get your thoughts on. He was respectful of you. Firstly, he was certainly, I wouldn't say admired you, but he had that respect for what you've done recently and the career you've been building over this past few years. But he said, "We chose you. We will see you come fight night. You're looking to just grasp this opportunity to say you graced the ring with George Kambosos."
That's just typical George, isn't it? He says he chose me. I was the one who asked for this fight. I was out of contract with Matchroom and I was being pushed towards fighting Gary Cully. But I went off my own back to speak to Lou DiBella. I asked Lou DiBella, I'm out of contract. I want a big fight. I know you look after George. Is that fight thingy? And if he chose me. He probably wouldn't have known who I was if I didn't appear in Lou DiBella's DMs, something like that. He wouldn't have paid no attention to me. But he's had a golden goose land in his lap, and he's had a world rated fighter, IBO champion. Because if I didn't do that, who would George be fighting? Who else was going to fight him? I know he's technically what they call the A side. He signed with Top Rank. He's a former unified champion. Fine, I admire him for that, for what he's done and the status he's got. But if that's what he wants to do, fine. Let's not forget this is the George Kambosos show now. So whatever.
I mean, I think it's only the beginning of the comments. We know George certainly likes to get fired up during a fight week. I'm sure he won't be short of a few words thrown in your direction. Is that something which maybe you're thinking about, or how to kind of not allow him to get underneath your skin, or at least not to show it if he does ever annoy you during the fight week activities?
I'm a bit long in too for that. I'm a bit of a no nonsense guy. I don't play mind games. I don't believe in getting in people's head. All that when fighters do the stare down and somebody looks away first, saying, "I say I beat you now. I've got you," and I paid no attention to that. It just don't wash with me, any of that. And I would imagine, yeah, he might come with thinking he's got games, mind games. If he needs that to help him sleep at night, then great. Let him think that. But he needs to realise none of that washes with me, and I don't pay no attention to it. It won't throw me off my game. Kid Galahad tried it. He tried throwing a few little personal attacks at me, of like saying my financial situation's thingy, and it's like, if he actually knew me and knew it like that, he's totally barking up wrong trees. So it'd be the same with George if he tries his antics. But I know George likes to thrive off trash talk and out like that. But I would imagine he'll feel pretty flat. after coming face to face with me because I give nothing away. And my face is a bit emotionless. Some people say I look scared, but it's that's just, I guess, my resting face. It's not what's going on inside. I'm always cool, calm, collected, no nonsense, and I'm ready to do a job.
Just one other comment of George's I want to put to you, more of a kind of looking at the fight itself. He said he sees so many holes in your defence. The fight with Kid Galahad was close. On another day, thinks Kid would have got the result, and he was surprised by that because Galahad is somebody coming up in weight from featherweight on the back of obviously that stoppage defeat to Kiko Martinez as well. He sees a lot of holes in your defence that he feels he can exploit.
Oh, good luck finding him then, George. He says that he was saying with Lee Selby. He only just beat Lee Selby, a featherweight moving up. You know what I mean? If he talks that much rubbish, I think he forgets he's a walking contradiction. So, um, it's all talk. Talk is cheap. Like I said, that's him trying to as much as like you said, he's give me that respect at the start of the conversation. He seems quick to try and turn it and discredit me, and maybe that's him trying to get himself fired up, having to tell himself that it was, but exactly the same happened to him. People say he was lucky to beat Lee Selby, with split decision, a featherweight. He held the same belt. IBF featherweight champion, moved up. So,
Maxi, I know you don't obviously want to look beyond George. Before we do move past that, with George signing with Top Ranker and being an ESPN fighter now, are there any concerns of yours traveling over if it was to go to the cards?
Obviously, I would have thought. I'd like to think that it being in America, none of us being Americans, it would be neutral ground. But in the rules meeting and stuff like that, I'm yet to see who the judges are. But I won't take no shit over there. If I feel they're trying to play games and trying to put me at a disadvantage and little tricks, then I'm not having it. I won't stand for it. Like I said, I'm experienced and I'm a bit long in tooth for little silly games and trying to get an edge here and there. So if I feel they're trying to take piss out of me, I won't have it. Me and my team, we won't have it. So, I'd like to think that it's a level playing field with the judges. My job is to just go out there and win clinically and clearly and make sure that that decision, can't be a dodgy one and swing the wrong way.
Maxi, I know you don't want to look beyond George, as I said previously, but the kind of landscape of the lightweight division has changed so much in the last 6 to 12 months. Obviously, we saw Ryan and Tank, but since then, Ryan moved up to 140. Devin's considering his future. Will he vacate those titles, move up to 140 himself? Really, the only ones set at 135 are Shakur and Tank in terms of other big profile fights that you might be looking at. Have you thought about maybe if those titles become vacant, where you might position yourself trying to get one of those fights, especially with a win against George Kambosos on your resume? You would imagine it would certainly put you in an even better position, especially going over and fighting on a top ranked show.
Yeah, well, that was always the plan to, pursue an avenue to get me. Like obviously, I'm ranked well with the IBF. This fight's an IBF eliminator, so that's the plan. That's the idea. Beat George, defend my belt. My belt's on the line as well as an IBF eliminator. So the plan is to, continue a ranking with that. I'm so sure win over George on 22nd is going to put me in good stead for just big fights, whoever it may be, who is next. It's some. I would imagine my next fight will probably be in States as well. Now signed with Lou DiBella. He has the options for my next fight, so I would imagine whoever it is and what it is, it may be over there, and it's only going to be bigger.
Maxi, just kind of getting your thoughts on one of your campmates. Obviously, waiting to see what's happening with Josh Warrington. A lot of talk about that Lee Wood fight. Is there maybe a hint of jealousy on Josh's behalf that you've managed to get that American fight before him?
We're not spoke about it. He's done no, but help me in preparation for this and support me. So, we haven't spoke about that, but I know it's something he deserves to do it, and he's long to do it, and there's still a chance for him to do it, but he'll get to experience it. It might help coming out with me and doing my corner, being able to see how it works, because everyone says it's different to UK shows fighting under the different commissions. So he'll get to experience it like that, and then when he gets his chance, he's sort of familiar with it. He knows sort of what they do. Like I've heard that they do the official weigh-in maybe 10 o'clock in the morning in an empty room in your hotel, and then still do the 1, 2 o'clock, whatever, for the public. Nobody's confirmed to me whether that's what's happening or not. Do all top rank shows do that? Do you know?
From my recollection, pretty much most shows that I've covered in America, they do have weighing behind closed doors with the fighters first thing in the morning, as you mentioned, say 9, 10, 11 a.m. And then they'll do a ceremonial one in the afternoon for the public just to see.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's a question I can ask and find out what that's about.
Just whilst I've got you, just looking at that, as you mentioned, Josh Warrington there, what's your understanding and what's Josh's understanding of where things stand with that Lee Wood fight?
I think that they're just waiting for maybe contracts and the fight deal. I believe that's what's happening, and trying to secure a date and venue, I believe. But obviously it's early days, so all the tension is just get George beat, get a job done there, and then for me, I've got a little family break. I'll be straight back in gym, and then I'll be pushing lads, Reese and Josh and other lads we've got into their fights. So, whatever Josh's fight is next, I'll be there to support and help it best way I can.
It seems to be that there's obviously a couple of things for them to overcome. With Josh, Lee Woods got that WBA title. He had the Kolmatov fight ordered. So we don't know if he'll have to vacate that so he can fight Josh. Do you have any kind of understanding or any conversations with Josh where he said where things stand on that front?
No, I know in past, like when I'm trying to think what fight it was now. There was a certain fight where Matchroom was supposed to pay Kid Galahad step aside money, I believe. I don't believe it happened. So, I would imagine that Matchroom will want that, if that fight's happening, that they'll want that fight to be at the belt line. So they've got to negotiate with I forget his name, the Uzbekistan who's mandatory. They've got to put it to him to see if he's willing to step, to suppose wait for a payout, and he might say no. He might say no. I've earned my shot. I want it now. I don't care how much money you want to try and pay me. I want my shot. So, they've got to negotiate that first, haven't they? I suppose that's the first big hurdle that they've got to overcome, is finding out the belt situation. So, we'll see.
Final one, Maxi, and just to pull it back around to yourself, as I forgot to get your thoughts on it. Back on the Tayloy-Cameron card in Ireland, we saw Gary Cully suffer an early stoppage defeat. Obviously, you two being linked to potentially fighting each other earlier on in your career, not earlier on in your careers, but more recently rather. What did you make of that stoppage defeat that Gary suffered?
Well, it's just my opinion is just trying to run before he could walk. He hasn't got that experience. I think they tried to target me so that he could bypass the domestic scene. I know because he's from Ireland, isn't he? So he's not in the British rankings. But, he's not far away. He needs that domestic experience. And this is what I was trying to say all along. It's too soon for him because he hasn't got that grounding. I was having, domestic fights when I was in my early 20s. Gary's not I didn't realise until after the fight he's not a young pup, is he? He's not far off 30, and he hasn't had these kind of fights yet. Whereas with myself, you know, my 10th fight, fighting undefeated fight Scotty Cardle, and then the 3 fights Martin Ward. I actually went over to Belfast as well to fight James Fry as an unbeaten prospect. So I've put the work in. I haven't tried to cut corners. I've fought the domestic guys, and that experience is what you need. He's tried to bypass that, and he's come up against a good Mexican who can punch a bit, but he hasn't had the experience to do that. And I hope he was all right after the fight. I don't know what's happening. It's all gone a bit quiet for him, but we'll have to see what he comes back with. Yeah, so that's sort of my opinion on it. When I fought somebody similar in Giovanni Straffon, a bit unknown, could really punch. He was active, wasn't he? 3 months prior to fighting me, he came over here to upset the odds with Tennyson. But my experience and my ability and my level, I won every round. So yeah, he's got to go back to the drawing board, hasn't he? So wish him well.
How difficult, and this is my final question, Maxi, how difficult can that be just for any young boxer coming through, anybody who might be looking for a similar route as what Gary's had? He's obviously gone through stopping these opponents, and you mentioned he maybe didn't have that grounding at the domestic level, and then you come up stuck against one of the somebody traveling over who just goes and produces that type of performance, nothing which has really prepared you for that fight in your career so far.
Yeah.
How difficult can it be not to believe that own hype when you see what you've done prior to that?
Yeah, you've just got to be realistic with yourself. There's no shortcuts in boxing. You get exceptional talents like, excuse me, Lomachenko's, who his pro debut was a world title eliminator. You get the exceptional talents who can do them shortcuts and straight into the big fights. But when you're not one of them, you've got to do it the hard way. There is, like I said, there's no shortcuts. You can't buy experience. You can't dodge experience. You've got to go out and you've got to earn it. And sometimes it don't go your way. Like with myself, I had them early career losses, but they've stood me in better stead. So these type of fights that I'm heading into now, I've got that. I've got them mental tip boxes and stuff done. And when you have a loss, it questions everything. It questions your desire, your motivation, your hunger. How much do you really want it? Especially, I ain't experienced a devastating loss like that. But getting properly KO'd, I'm sure there's going to be some demons. He's got to exercise them demons and question himself. Only he'll know that by any young fighter will know that by looking themselves in the mirror, asking themselves those tough questions. How much do I want it? Am I willing to be honest with myself, look what went wrong, and work at it and come back? So any young fighters they've just got to be honest with themselves. Don't look to blame anyone. Look yourself in the mirror, hold yourself accountable, and work on it and bring yourself back if that's what you want to do.
Right, Maxi, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you. Obviously, enjoy this final period of your camp. Safe travels over to America, and of course, good luck.
Good, mate, yeah.
Night. Thank you for speaking to me.
Cheers, mate. Cheers, Andy.